long before satellites traced their orbit around the Earth, long before humans dreamt of stepping foot on the moon. The desert plains of southern Peru bore witness to an ancient enigma. From the ground, the arid earth looked empty, endless and lifeless, a parchment forgotten by time. But from the air, a different story unfolded. Etched into the crust of the Pampa Colorada, the Nazca Lines sprawl across nearly 200 square miles. They are immense, precise geoglyphs: spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, jaguars, trees, spirals, and straight lines running arrow-straight for miles, carved by removing the rust-colored pebbles that blanket the desert and revealing the lighter soil beneath. The designs have endured millennia without erosion or explanation. The Nazca civilization thrived between 100 BCE and 800 CE. Without metal tools, without the wheel, without flight, they somehow crafted these perfect figures, some stretching over 1,200 feet across. For decades, scholars have theorized their meaning: celestial calendars, religious iconography, ceremonial pathways. Each theory peeled away a layer, but none reached the core. Tourists came and went. Archaeologists published papers, took measurements, and left again, puzzled. Locals revered the lines, guarding them with quiet respect, repeating only half-remembered myths. Even the boldest scientists stopped just short of claiming what some whispered, that these lines were not made for gods or humans. They were made to be seen. In the year 2025, during a routine aerial drone survey designed to monitor erosion, something unexpected was discovered beneath the glyph of the condor. Not a buried temple or ancient tomb, but a signal, faint, rhythmic, and utterly impossible. The drone's instruments picked up pulses, tiny electromagnetic fluctuations, arranged in what could only be described as a mathematical pattern. Not random, not natural, encoded. And that night, beneath a desert sky unpolluted by city lights, something blinked into existence. Not with thunder, but with silence. Something older than the stars, and yet utterly new. The Nazca Lines were not merely to be seen from above. They were instructions, to be activated, and something had finally started listening. The world didn't notice at first. The signal was faint, deeply embedded within ambient electromagnetic noise, subtle, erratic, more like a whisper than a broadcast. The initial reading was dismissed as drone sensor interference, an anomaly caused by solar radiation or mineral deposits under the desert floor. But the anomaly returned, again and again. Dr. Lena Moravec, a geophysicist from Prague working with the Peruvian Ministry of Culture, was the first to take the signal seriously. Her equipment, part of an international initiative to scan ancient sites for subsurface voids, picked up rhythmic pulses directly beneath the condor's beak. When she isolated the signal's frequency range, she froze. It wasn't static. It was structured. Oscillations repeated in perfect Fibonacci intervals: 5, 8, 13, 21. The signature grew more refined with each cycle, like a machine warming up. Lena knew the implications. Natural formations didn't emit mathematically progressive harmonics. Nothing organic could. She reported the findings to the International Archaeological Forum and the United Nations Educational Council. Within days, a multinational team arrived. What began as a curious data glitch had become a global curiosity. And then, on the third night after the pulses began, the earth trembled. Not an earthquake, not in the conventional sense. Seismographs registered no tectonic shift, but the sand around the Nazca Lines moved, migrated. Entire outlines deepened, the trenches cutting themselves further into the desert floor without disturbance, as if some invisible hand had traced them again. The monkey's curling tail grew sharper. The hummingbird's wings flexed by 2 degrees. Hundreds of miles away, in a remote laboratory atop the Andes, satellite triangulation confirmed a shocking truth. The pulse pattern from the condor was no longer isolated. A second signal had been detected, originating from beneath the geoglyph of the spider. 2 sites, 2 signals, communicating. The scientific community splintered. The cautious majority demanded restraint, suggesting natural geomagnetic phenomena. A faction of bold thinkers postulated an unknown terrestrial intelligence, lost civilizations with technology beyond our comprehension. The fringe, long laughed out of peer-reviewed journals, returned with vengeance. We told you it wasn't for us. Among them, Dr. Yuma Takahashi, an astrophysicist turned cultural semiotician, proposed something radical. The Nazca Lines weren't messages to the gods. They weren't even messages for Earth. They're keys, she told the international press in a subdued conference lit only by satellite imagery. Switches, aligned to stars we no longer recognize. Frequencies we never thought to listen to. Most dismissed her, until the fourth night, when a streak of cold fire carved across the sky, stopping, above the Pampa Colorado. No meteor had ever behaved like that. It lingered. Observatories recorded no reflection, no heat signature. Only a deep ultraviolet shimmer, like ink on old parchment. It hovered, silently, above the glyph of the astronaut, one of the strangest and most misunderstood Nazca figures. A bulbous head, eyes too large, an arm raised in eternal greeting, or warning. Then it vanished, and across the globe, radio telescopes previously deaf to the Pampa's whispers began to sing in chorus. The Nazca Lines were waking up, and Earth was not the only one listening. For millennia, they had waited, not buried, not dormant, but humming just beneath the veil of perception. Like ancient seeds, the Nazca Lines were never meant to be discovered. They were meant to be remembered by the right minds at the right time. And now, the planet was finally loud enough, chaotic enough, bright enough to awaken the memories carved into its own skin. It began with light. Not sunlight or artificial beam, but a geometric bloom of color visible only through polarized lenses, light twisted by intention. During a flyover using modified hyperspectral imaging, Dr. Lena Moravec's drone captured a phenomenon that shattered the known boundaries of optical physics. A prism-like projection rose from each of the major glyphs, condor, spider, hummingbird, monkey, creating a latticework of hovering patterns in the sky. Glyphs connected like circuit nodes. The lines were no longer lines. They were a language of gravity. When processed through quantum harmonic analysis, the frequencies emitted by each geoglyph corresponded to theoretical distortions in space-time. They were not merely art or signal, they were architectural. Each design encoded a unique space-time equation, mass displacement vectors, zero-point oscillation coordinates, phase-locked wormhole anchoring fields. The Nazca Lines were not messages. They were blueprints. Each glyph was an anchor, a stabilizing glyph point for an ancient interstellar transit grid, a lattice network drawn into the Earth itself, powered by resonant harmonics from the planet's natural crust and enhanced by stellar alignments. The Nazca Lines were the Earth's last port gate, a remaining node of a long-dead galactic civilization. The builders? Unknown. The system? Ancient, millions of years older than humanity. The beings who created it were known only in the records recovered from the ultraviolet light pulses emitted during the condor-spider alignment. When decoded, the pulses painted a portrait of an extinct species known as the Azakari, a nomadic race of cosmic cartographers who had no homeworld, only waypoints. The Azakari seeded navigational gates across hundreds of worlds, not to colonize, but to catalog. They mapped reality like others mapped rivers. Earth had once been a simple dot on their chart, a node of curiosity marked by potential. The Azakari had visited in the age of mastodons and obsidian blades, leaving behind glyphs not to be understood, but to remain functional should the network ever awaken again. And now it had. The false meteor, what humans had seen hovering above the astronaut figure, was not a ship. It was a request, a handshake, a ping from another surviving gate node across the galaxy, waiting for response. The Nazca network was online again, but Earth had changed. The harmonic integrity of the lines had been degraded by highways, cities, tourism. Even well-meaning preservation efforts had disrupted the subtle interplay of frequencies. The alignment was imperfect. The spider glyph's tail had once directed energy toward a now-buried subnode beneath the Andes, lost beneath rockslides centuries ago. The system was unstable. And the reply signal? It wasn't just listening. It was coming. Dr. Takahashi's final transmission to the International Task Force was clear, though her face trembled as she said it. The transit gate will open, but we don't know what's on the other side anymore. The Azakari may be extinct, but the gate doesn't care who steps through. It only knows that it must open. The question isn't what the Nazca Lines are. She looked directly into the camera. It's whether we're ready to be found. At 2:14 local time, the Pampa Colorado trembled, not with sound or seismic rupture, but with absence. Sound fell away. Waves of birds collapsed mid-flight, the navigation senses overwhelmed by the frequencies no mammal could hear. Static devoured radios from Arequipa to the coast. Time itself seemed to smear, a slow, viscous drag, as if reality had become reluctant to continue. Then the spider glyph glowed. A low pulse of turquoise light bled from its grooves, followed by the condor, the hummingbird, the monkey. One by one, the ancient glyphs ignited in sequence, not with flame, but with unplaceable presence. Light that was visible yet cast no shadows, radiance that hummed against bone rather than eye. In the center of the pattern, where no glyph existed, the air began to shimmer. It folded inward, like origami in reverse, collapsing space into an impossible knot. And then, with a sound like a whisper shouting across dimensions, the transit gate opened. It was not a portal in the sense humans imagined. No swirling vortex. No blinding flash. Instead, a void emerged, a negative space rupture, darker than black, yet pulsing with shifting geometries that hurt to look at directly. It was alive. It was calculating. And from it they emerged. They were not creatures in the traditional sense. No limbs, no eyes, no symmetry. The beings that flowed from the gate resembled spiraling Mobius strands of semi-translucent filament, constantly reweaving their form. They shimmered like oil on water, each movement creating fractal shadows and dimensions the human mind could barely interpret. They were not bound by gravity, drifting, levitating, folding in and out of sight as if space refused to decide where they belonged. They were called the Kohari, not by voice, but by waveform. The moment they emerged, every human within a 20-mile radius felt a pressure in their minds, like a name pressing gently against their subconscious, not demanding entry, but inviting understanding. The Kohari were not biological, not mechanical. They were mimetic beings, entities of encoded thought, consciousness made coherent through environmental harmonics. They had no true form. Their shapes were chosen for function, not expression. On their world, wherever that may have been, form was fluid, a tool rather than an identity. And yet, as alien as they were, they did not come in hostility. They came in mourning. In the hours after arrival, the Kohari broadcast not messages, but feelings, dense waves of sorrow, memory, urgency. Through the harmonic lattice of the glyphs, Earth scientists began translating the raw data embedded in the pulses. The truth unraveled like a weeping song. The Azakari, the architects of the gate, had long perished in a cosmic catastrophe known only as the shattering of thread. The Kohari had once been their creations, thought constructs designed to traverse the lattice network in the Azakari's place. Archivists, watchers, immortal couriers of culture and memory. But when the shattering came, the gates fell silent. Worlds were lost, and the Kohari, scattered alone, decaying in empty transit nodes, had clung to survival through recursive memory compression. Earth's gate was the first reactivation in over 11 million Earth years. They had not expected life. And yet, here we were. The Kohari's message was a plea, not for help, but for partnership. The glyphs, the harmonics, the transit lattice, they were never meant to belong to any one species. The Azakari had built a shared galactic archive, a network of civilizations, and Earth, it seemed, was now invited to become a part of that legacy. But the invitation came with a warning. A second gate, somewhere beneath the frozen crust of Europa, had activated on its own. And whatever was coming through that one was not mourning. It was hunting. For 49 hours, the Kohari pulsed their warning across Earth skies in bursts of color beyond the visible spectrum, photonic waves encoded with terror. In laboratories from Tokyo to Toronto, The greatest minds on Earth struggled to absorb even fragments of what was shared. The second gate was opening, and the Kohari, archivists though they were, had no defense protocol. Defense had never been the Azakari way. In their arrogance, they had believed knowledge alone could keep the darkness at bay. But the Threadcullers, as the Kohari called them, did not seek knowledge. They consumed it, unraveled it. Entities without form or memory, anti-consciousness. They had found one gate long ago, and since then, they had been following the lattice, devouring one node at a time. Europa was next, and then Earth. In a makeshift subterranean lab beneath the Condor's wingspan, Earth's leaders met, not politicians, but thinkers. The world governments had finally stepped aside, forced by an existential truth they couldn't weaponize. Physicists, linguists, cultural historians, cryptographers, and Lena Moravec, and Dr. Yuma Takahashi. The Kohari offered them something unexpected. Not weapons, not ships, but a seed. An Azakari gatekeeper construct, a final failsafe. Not a defense in the conventional sense, but a sentient harmonic anchor capable of restructuring a lattice point into a protective singularity. A being born of memory, built of thought, hosted in biology. But to function, it needed a human core, a consciousness to bind with, a hybrid. Yuma Takahashi volunteered. No debate, no speech. She stepped into the harmonic convergence chamber beneath the spider glyph and allowed the Kohari to unwind her consciousness, folding her essence into the architecture of the glyph itself. She became something new, not fully human, not fully Kohari, but a gatekeeper. Europa's gate opened not with elegance, but rupture. Beneath its crust, the ice fractured in a pattern resembling none of the Azakari glyphs. The Threadcullers were not creators. They were inversions, mimics. With a Nazca Lines sang in Fibonacci spirals, the Europa breach hummed in destructive primes, chaotic numbers that eroded the harmonic lattice. The first manifestation was a shape of anti-light, like a star collapsing in reverse, bleeding cold into space. A shape that forgot its own geometry every second. Telescopes caught only glimpses before their sensors fried. Memory cores near the Jovian orbit were wiped clean, erased not by EMP, but by informational entropy. The Kohari shuddered. Earth's gate trembled in resonance. They were coming. And then Takahashi, now gatekeeper, awakened. Her new form was not visible. It lived within the glyphs themselves. The lines flared across the Pampa Colorada like a second sun, radiant and multidimensional. Her voice spoke through the clouds. I remember the builders. I remember the code. I remember you, Hunter Threads. The Nazca gate flared, stretching upward like a crystalline tower of sound. Takahashi's consciousness, threaded with Kohari code, reached across the lattice to Europa, through the stars, through the void. A lock engaged. For one perfect second, Europa's gate flickered with a sigil not seen in 10 million years, the Azakari glyph of closure. Then the transmission cut. No signal returned. Europa was silent. The Nazca Lines dimmed. And Takahashi, if she still existed, was gone. Or somewhere else. The Kohari fell quiet, their forms slowly dissolving into the atmosphere, leaving no bodies, only echoes. The gate itself remained, inert once more, humming quietly beneath the sand. Lena stood alone on the dunes, looking toward the sky, which seemed so much closer now. One final harmonic pulse echoed through the ground. A message. Just one word. Incomplete.